everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar. My name is Deirdre Pelrin, and I'm the Senior Manager of Demand Generation here at Smashfly, and I'll be your host today. We are so excited that you've joined us for what's going to be an awesome webinar. We have a ton of great content coming up, but first I'd like to go over just a few housekeeping items. Today you have two options for connecting to the webinar audio. You can either connect to the broadcast using your computer's speakers, or you can connect via phone, and the dial-in information is available in the WebEx panel under the Quick Start tab. If you experience any technical difficulties with WebEx today, you can contact WebEx support at 1-866-229-3239, and I'll also be typing this phone number into the chat panel for your reference during the webinar. Also, after the presentation today, we'll be hosting a live Q&A, and you'll have the chance to ask your questions, and we encourage you to submit questions throughout the webinar in the Q&A panel on the WebEx platform. We'll also be sending both the recording of today's webinar and the slides via email after the event, so you can look out for that in your inbox about 24 hours from the conclusion of the webinar. And last but very not least, we're going to be live tweeting during the webinar today, and we'd love it if you'd join in on the discussion with us. And we encourage you to tweet about all the great content we're going to share using the hashtag #RMWebinar. And now I would like to introduce our incredible speaker today, Meghan Biro, who is the CEO and co-founder of Talent Culture. Meghan is a globally recognized talent management and HR tech strategist, digital catalyst, author, and speaker. She's the Talent Culture founder and CEO, co-founder of the T-Chat World of Work community, and she's worked with hundreds of global brands from early stage ventures to global brands like Microsoft and Google, helping them recruit and empower stellar talent. So without further ado, I would like to hand it over to Meghan. Meghan?
Yes, it's great to be here. Thank you so much, and welcome everyone. I'm really excited to be presenting this webinar today on behalf of my friends here at Smashfly. They also happen to be located in Massachusetts, where I am, so I think that's pretty stellar. I'm going to be multitasking like I usually do if you guys follow my T-Chat show every week, my podcast, and my Twitter chat. So we'll be using hashtag #RMWebinar for this. So come join the party. Let's do a lot of learning and have some fun today. Again, really, really excited to be here. So today I'm going to be talking about how recruitment marketing drives transparency and talent acquisition. So today's hiring economy is highly complex and competitive, and that's probably why I love talking about it so much, right? Finding top talent is harder than ever. In fact, attracting candidates and retaining current employees is a lot like attracting and retaining customers. Can you believe I said that word? Candidates, job seekers, are now seeking a relevant, transparent, and personalized job seeker process, right? And they expect this in every single interaction before they even get to your job application. So the bottom line, and something that I'm really passionate about talking about, is how you treat every candidate in your process has a direct impact on your brand. In today's digital age, we're sharing experiences online, tweeting, right? I might even be live tweeting while I'm delivering all this to you guys. I'm multitasking, right? We're all doing that. It's commonplace, and even now more expected. So a poor candidate experience can be bad for business and translate to millions in lost revenue annually. So we've got a pretty dynamic, changing talent acquisition landscape, and this requires a more proactive, engaging, and multi-touch approach. Recruitment marketing is really how you find, attract, engage, and nurture candidates, right? It's your talent acquisition leads to build a more qualified pipeline of candidates, and ultimately we hope you're going to make those into quality hires. So it's clearly driving today's modern recruiting brands. Today's job seeker doesn't just want a job, right? They want career development opportunities. They want a stellar company culture. They want employee camaraderie, and they want purpose. We all want purpose as people and humans, right? And that's why transparent marketing is so critical right now and so interesting. But first, I want to set the tone by discussing how to make candidate experience a recruiting brand win, right? That's something I'm really passionate about as a former recruiting practitioner for many years in the space. It's a really, really key step in being transparent with your process. Right now, we're all job seekers, bottom line, right? And you can bet at some point you're going to get contacted by a recruiter. Whether or not you're looking actively, whether you're a CEO, a V-level executive, probably especially then, right? Whether you're, an entrepreneur, your chances are you're going to be contacted. We're all going to be contacted, right? So we remember that there's jobs to be had, there's new firms to work in, and there's new things to do. So in that sense, I think we're all just waiting to be, well, activated, right? Kind of weird, kind of awesome, kind of complex. So that's why I'm here today talking about this subject. And thanks so much for being here, by the way. We're having fun on the Twitters. Hopefully you all you're using the RM webinar hashtag along with me, all right? So I want to bring this over to the idea of the fact that it's a small world, actually. I'm going to bring you to 4 key parts of the candidate experience we can all do better at, from brand to leadership to recruiting. So not to be cavalier or anything with you all, but people expect to be treated well, right? Sounds kind of obvious. To ignore that is to possibly not only lose candidates, but lose referrals from their friends, right? The Talent Board is a really, really cool nonprofit organization, by the way, that I'm involved with. As a member, I believe some of the team at Smashfly is as well. Well, we took a lot of really interesting data, right, because it's all about data now. And the Talent Board, by the way, is responsible for the annual Candidate Experience Awards. We call ourselves the Candies. We recently looked at data gleaned from some 250,000 surveys on candidate experience, and this was data from North America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. And a quarter of the candidates who say they had a bad experience said they would go out of their way to discourage others from applying. And I found that to be kind of a staggering piece of data. And 60% of those who had a positive candidate experience said they would go out of their way to encourage others to apply. So, pretty interesting findings here, don't you think? Kind of scary, kind of cool. And what I'm really excited about is in early 2016, we're going to be getting more of this candidate experience research report done. And I'll be sure to be talking about that and blogging about that, and we'll get that shared with you. So, you knew I was going to go here, right? Getting social. So after that come to Jesus moment, when you're staring in that workplace bathroom mirror, when we realize that, oh my God, my supervisor is a psychopath, this workplace culture stinks, it's never going to fit my values, or that advancement means getting, a software upgrade and incentives, right? Or maybe you're going to get a Post-it note as like a gift, and you're going, this is really lame. Like, what do I do now? What is the first thing we do as humans when we realize we're not in the right job situation? It's not the right fit. Well, if you're like me, well, I don't know what kind of smartphone you have, but I'm sure you have one of these flavors, right? You're going to reach for your iPhone, or maybe your Samsung, right? You're going to do that, though, probably, right? So as we reach for our mobile phones, we're doing Google searches, we're looking on social media for jobs, right? But most organizations still do not understand the importance of mobile and social for job seekers, unfortunately. A very recent social recruiting DICE webinar offered this very unsettling fact to me, that while 93% of recruiters plan on using social in the coming year, only 18% of them say they feel confident in their social skills. That's a huge, huge gap, and it's something that I think we need to wrap our heads around first and foremost, and we need to do something about it. So, talk to me. I'm talking to you, all right? How we doing out there? Everybody having fun on this webinar or what? So, an essential part of the candidate experience continues to be that interview. in the don't fix what isn't broken category of candidate experience that too often someone seems to try to replace with lesser process. So let's start with the pre-application stage, right? We have some really cool Smashfly research that indicates that 94% are likely to apply to a job if employers actively manage their own brand. This is a critical piece of data. Why? You manage your brand well, you make it enticing to those you want to employ. Now, it doesn't happen by chance, right? This has to be strategically planned and executed well. And I want to remind everybody of that. If you plan on being lazy about this, it's not going to work. This stuff just doesn't happen overnight. It's a lot of work, actually. So once we get through that, we get to the interview stage, and that's a whole new process. So I'm going to go back to some of the survey data that I've been talking about. The Candies 2014-15 survey data showed that the interview is absolutely crucial for candidate as well as employer. Among its other purposes, it's an essential drill down for fit, right? I'm a huge fan of talking about the importance of fit. It's also expensive. It requires travel, time, and resources, right? But in terms of ROI, there's probably no replacing it right now. So here's some interesting takeaways for all of you. For candidates who did not have a good interview experience, I'll be a little exact with you, 16.4% said that they felt the interview did a bad job determining if they have the skills and abilities to perform the job they applied for. Follow-up clearly has some weaknesses still, right? While only 15.4% stated they had not received any information for follow-ups or next steps after an interview. This small percentage is reflecting a far too major oversight and could make or break on whether or not they actually went through with the hire. Finally, nearly 61% said there was no feedback after the interview, which is kind of sad to me, right? This is a very woefully missed opportunity to learn what works and what doesn't as a brand. So I know all too often we get like to the point where we're hurrying, we're rushed. Why bother doing that follow-up? There's actually a lot of good data and insight on your brand that can be gleaned there, so I don't want you to miss that opportunity. Which brings me to the most essential step we need to take, and it's a serious shift in perspective, so I hope everybody is sitting down with their seatbelts on. And if you're not in your car, you're somewhere else, forget about the seatbelt. Just put something else on. But, you know, we have yet to really put a large frame around recruitment as a profession, right? Not just as an occupation. Because we're all perpetual candidates, we're constantly reminded just what that candidate experience is really like. We're always experienced what it's like to walk a mile in another shoe, right? We want to experience that. And hopefully your brand wants to experience that, and they want to make that a priority, to walk a mile in a job seeker's shoes, right? And hopefully this will then translate to a leadership and culture mindset. Thinking like a job seeker also dovetails with the fact that job candidates are, in essence, consumers, in that they factor in the issue of employer brand. Here's some more data for you. You know how much I love this. So a LinkedIn survey in the UK found that more than half, 53% of job seekers polled would not accept a job offer from an organization with a lame employee brand, which includes poor job security, dysfunctional teams, just bad leadership, current or ex-employees who have bad things to say, or a shabby reputation in the industry. So clearly here, you know, we've got our work cut out for us. While a good candidate experience may not have the most profound effect on your hiring success yet, a bad one certainly will, and there's definitely going to be a ripple effect that I found happens with that process. So something to have top of mind. So I want to move towards recruitment marketing right now. And depending on your role in the field, whether it's HR or recruiting, we may want all sorts of shiny new recruitment tools, right? A colleague of mine described HR as a big bad funnel, with the widest point being where I think we need our recruiting market efforts to pay the most attention right now. We all need these tools we can get our hands on to attract talent, right? Everyone's kind of saying the same thing. Before a job at company X or Y or K or whatever it is can actually get anybody's attention, right? Before they are actually filling out the paperwork, those job seekers. And by the way, on paperwork, I've got my own dreams about how HR tech solves those 15-minute application processes, right? I think we all do. Kind of painful. So having said that, what I want to talk about is something that I call the ETF in HR and recruiting, the edge of the talent funnel. So I'm going to give you just a big bad wish list right now. Wider and smarter. There are enormously compelling reasons to not treat potential job seekers like people filling out applications, but like consumers. The rise of social and mobile, the shift in demographic cultures, and the 24/7 constancy of brand identity and awareness means that we need to market and target talent appropriately. A company has to really maintain and deepen its brand on all platforms, and there's many of them right now. A workplace really has to convey its own culture, making it appealing. And even the hiring process itself has to sell that potential consumer on the ease of use and benefits. Stick to your surface. There's a lot of talent out there, as we know. According to the BLS, there were 5.4 million job hires on the last business day of August 2015. We really need to be able to grab the attention of these potential hires far before they're even considering being candidates. This means we need tech that can seize any and all opportunities to create that initial handshake and get them interested in your brand. User-friendly both ways, right? We've got a user interface and we have an experience. And they're not just about talent, they're also about how HR pros and recruiting pros can utilize them. So in our quest to catch the eye of talent, we can't overlook the needs to also appeal to those doing well, the eye-catching, right? Like in all trenches, the HR tech really needs to deliver without complicating things more. Or all that fancy software that you're investing in won't mean a thing. And unslick. There's a nice trend right now towards using video and chats, right? Packages to convey employer identity and run onboarding, and really cool ways to conduct interviews and supply, FAQ type info. All great, but again, let's not let that be a one-way screen dump, right? Let's not forget about bringing humans into this equation. No matter how powerful the tech is that we adopt, you have to make it a transparent process. And I personally believe that real questions should be answered by a real person, right? So, using video to close the distance is great without shutting out an unscripted conversation. So transparency, bottom line, is authenticity, and tech has to build that into itself. On an interesting point raised recently regarding the intersection between sales, marketing, and HR, I kind of want to add a note of caution. The goal of marketing is always to land a sale, right? That's sort of that end goal. And the goal of shaping a consumer experience via that sale is to always create a loyalty to that brand or the product. Here's the key difference. We are more than consumers when it comes to working. We're workers. We're working together. Ours is a long-term constant gig, right? So the kind of loyalty we need tech to enable is far more than just a product. It's got to be that commitment to deeply engaging with our time and our energy, and there's less of it right now, in a company where we're willing to actually give it our all. And it's a thick and thin loyalty, right? It's not a gee, that's cool loyalty, which is kind of flaky. And if we don't remember that, we're not going to be able to maintain that transparency, right? And we're not going to be able to retain our best talent. So something I want everyone to kind of keep top of mind today. So moving on, well, let's get down to it. Let's talk a little bit about what recruitment marketing is and what it isn't per our good friends here at Smashfly. And I think this funnel's kind of cool, actually. I hope you guys like it. Fancy stuff. So recruitment marketing is every tactic. This could be content, email, social media, mobile, career sites, employer referrals, talent networks, job marketing, branding, design. That is all the tactics that encompass recruitment marketing. An organization uses these tactics, right, to find, attract, and engage and nurture job seekers and candidates in order to convert more qualified and interested leads into applicants that actually fill out jobs now. And what I hope, they're going to want to do that in the future. And that's the key nuance there, right? So not every qualified candidate is ready to move on to the next career opportunity right now, as we know. Just think about your own career. If you're gainfully employed right now and you're good with it, right? Maybe you're not ready right now. Many of us are actually kind of happy where we are. Recruitment marketing can help bridge that gap, though, between when a candidate is interested in your brand and when they're ready to make a move to advance their career. More of an on-demand approach, if you will. It's also an opportunity to communicate your employer brand and educate candidates on the value as an employer. Today's top talent doesn't just want a job, right? We want culture, we want inspiration, we want incentive, we want camaraderie and meaning. And we want this to be easily accessible. We're kind of high maintenance right now, right? We have pretty big needs, and through many of the channels we use most. So with all of these amazing, cool digital touch points today, recruiting organizations cannot win the best talent with a siloed one-off strategy. So I want to kind of go a little bit deeper into what recruitment marketing really is and what it isn't right now. It's a new discipline. It's inspired by marketing tactics that talent acquisition teams lead and own and collaborate. There's that magical word, they collaborate with marketing. It isn't owned by marketing. It's a holistic strategy that touches every attraction and engagement effort, pre-application and talent acquisition. And this could include posting and distributing jobs, but it's so much more than that. It isn't just, posting to multiple job boards. It's got to be more strategic than that. It's really the front end of the talent acquisition that engages and nurtures candidates pre-application, requiring separate technology that integrates with an ATS. It isn't a strategy you can successfully implement with an ATS. It is about tracking all stages of the recruitment funnel, including initial views, applies, clicks, source candidates, qualified candidates, and applicants to ensure a better budget and plan for your efforts. And it isn't just about tracking hires. It is how you share, communicate, and market your brand. It's not the same thing as employer branding. And it is a strategy that focuses on both attracting active job seekers as well as engaging passive candidates and talent pipelines to fill future roles. And this isn't the same thing as job advertising. So clearly, there's a lot of nuance here between what it is and what it isn't. And it's a really important thing to try to understand right now. It's also an internal discipline and core competency of a modern recruiting brand, right? An organization, and this includes, managing outside vendors like agency and advertising partners. And it isn't only led by an agency. And lastly, it is one strategy with numerous tactics that should be led and executed by recruiting, employer branding, and talent acquisition leaders. It isn't solely executed by recruiters, and this is so important for me to stress. Recruiters cannot live alone on this island. It's got to be a collaborative opportunity to partner with other members of the team. So no one person can do this by themselves, and I think that's the important part about recruiting marketing. It's a process. So I want to talk a little bit more about just what that process is, right? So as an example for everybody, we'll say an organization wants to implement an employer referral program, and they need a plan, and they need it in all caps, right? So they're going to start discussing and deciding who is eligible for this. What rewards and incentives should we use, right? What qualifies somebody as an employee referral? Just interviewed or hired and retained for a certain amount of time? Maybe. And what are your referral goals? So during the execution of the program, you need to be consistently evaluating what's working. So in this case, what incentives are working? How should we revamp our plan based on needs changes, right? And don't do any of this without measurement, right? That's the other piece of this. How did we improve our referral rate? What was that return on the investment? So then you want to evaluate. Most referral programs go a year. We evaluate the metrics, we rebrand, and then we launch again with new leads. So, ask yourself, is this the right approach, and are we being transparent along the way? So hopefully, having a plan, executing it, measuring it, evaluating, refreshing, and then launching, that's kind of a large view on this process that I'm talking about. And hopefully that's helpful. So now that we've got all that established, I'm going to talk a little bit about 5 ways to attract and engage candidates, right? But before I kind of jump in there, I want to end with where I started and state we're all perpetual candidates who are either constantly being re-recruited into our current organizations, which is an employee engagement opportunity, by the way, for your brands, or we're being recruited out, which is an attrition and opportunity issue for the brand. So it doesn't really matter whether we're happily employed, some of us are, or unhappily disengaged, many of us are, right, unfortunately. We're looking for our next gig or not. We're kind of all in the same boat in this regard. We're perpetual candidates, regardless of gender, generation, skill set, or experience, which is why it's critical that you get your transparent recruitment marketing right, and your entire recruiting process for that matter, right? So again, according to the latest 2015 Talent Board data on candidate experience from a whopping 130,000 job seekers that were surveyed, most of whom were not hired, by the way, 80% of these people said they were likely to share positive recruiting experiences with their inner circle, and 66% will share negative ones. And when it comes to sharing publicly, and this could be online, this could be Facebook, it could be Twitter, it could be LinkedIn, everywhere, 53% will share their positive stories, and 33% will share their negative ones. The good news is that percentage of candidates who had a negative response to their overall job-seeking experience dropped slightly from 12% in 2014 to 10% in 2015. These are the people who replied that they will definitely take their alliance, their product purchases, their relationship somewhere else. But when you do the math, these are 13,000 people who won't be buying, in air quotes, employer-branded bull or your stuff, right? This kind of candidate resentment can add up to millions of dollars of lost revenue, so this is not a minor detail. Those employers excelling in candidate experience, whether you were a candy winner or not, are reaping the benefits. Here's a few more data points for you from early cuts from the 2015 survey data. We're going to release this early in 2016, by the way, which I'm really excited about. 70% of candidates surveyed are likely to apply again to the same employers, slightly above the last year. 70% of candidates surveyed are likely or extremely likely to refer someone else to those employers they had applied for a job at. Plus, over 50% of all these candidates had no relationship prior to applying to the company. That's huge. And 68% of the candidates surveyed rated the employers they wished to, they applied to with 3 or more stars out of 5 stars on their overall candidate experience. And that's 3% higher than in 2014. So kind of some interesting factoids for you all there. All right, so moving on over here, I got to delve into some recent Smashfly industry research, and this combined with my own work and experience in recruiting, I am now equipped to share 5 ways that you can better attract and engage candidates with your employer brand and your content. Number 1, employee stories. How cool is this? This is absolutely key because employee stories let candidates hear from future coworkers in their own voice about their career experience with your brand. This is also happens to be one of the employer best practices of the Can Use winners, by the way. So pretty important to let your employees, get out there and have a voice. We're finding that to be a really impactful angle. Number 2, targeted messaging by skills. Targeted messaging by skills provides career site content specific to departments or business units. This delivers a targeted candidate experience. Remember, there's no one-size-fits-all here. People are highly complex beings, right? So you want to target your messaging accordingly. Number 3, personalized experience by device, especially mobile, obviously. The career site homepage deemed mobile-friendly using Google's algorithm released April 2015 ensures candidates can find and browse your site from their smartphone or tablet device. If you're not mobile optimized right now, you're probably not going to be a candidate choice. This is a really critical step. Number 4, actively shaping online reputation. Your online presence is your brand. I cannot say that enough. We just discussed the critical nature of being optimized for mobile, but making sure your online presence is holistically assessed is really key. Is your website an on-brand recruiting resource? Are your career opportunities easy to find and compelling? Are you targeting specific demographics appropriately? If you're trying to reach college students, are you appealing to this talent and thinking of their needs and desires, right? Are you positively reviewed on Glassdoor? People do their research these days, as we know. Making sure that your employees on LinkedIn and other sites are positively shaping your online brand is really important. And again, transparency. Once again, it's woven in here. So don't be afraid to tell the truth about your workplace, but be sure to have careers positively and accurately depicted in any of these venues. And number 5, last but not least, drip marketing and nurture tactics, or tracks. Although recruitment marketing is owned by talent acquisition and not marketing, many traditional marketing tactics can be employed. Drip marketing, in this case, is staying in touch with your candidates, right? They could be active, they could be passive, consistently, and actively nurturing these leads. By building and sharing your brand with a steady beat of compelling info, you're much more likely to have a talent-first approach, right, where they're thinking of you already, and it's an opportunity to stay fresh. You really want to be that I want to work their brand. So, it's been, that's it in a nutshell. I think that I want to kind of conclude this part of the webinar by saying, I think the key takeaways here, transparency is key. Pay attention to the entire candidate experience, not just one piece of it. Remember that edge of the talent funnel. Understanding the basics of recruitment marketing are key, and use those 5 ways to attract and engage your talent. So this has been a lot of fun.
Thanks, Megan. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We're going to hop into our Q&A session, but first I just wanted to remind you that it's not too late to submit your questions. We're still taking questions through the Q&A panel right here in WebEx. We'll get to as many as time will allow. And I also do want to remind you again that we will be sending a copy of the slides and the recording via email within 24 hours. So now let's get on to the Q&A. Megan, you ready?
I'm as ready as I'm ever going to be, sure.
All right, lots of great questions coming in. Here's a great one. You mentioned improving the candidate experience. What ways do you recommend to begin improving the candidate experience? So kind of how do you get started?
Well, obviously you want to get all the key members of your team together on it. Recruiting, marketing, HR, right, your leaders, and have everybody have a collective understanding of what your brand is. I think allowing candidates to see into your organization is key. It could be real-life interaction. It could be video. It could be blog stories. You know, telling those stories about what it's really like to be there and letting your personality of your brand shine is really important. I think you also want to build opportunities for them to talk to others who have similar roles. So if you're hiring for a VP marketing, well, there's nothing better than having your current VP of marketing on a video, in a blog format, on a panel, whatever, you know, whatever creative platform you want to choose for that voice, having that person talk about what it's really like to be a VP of marketing, as an example. I think you want to create a plan for how to be engaging throughout your hiring process, right? Making sure that people aren't ignored, even if they don't get the job, you know, making sure that you have a follow-up system that enables people to understand, you know, if they really want feedback on why they weren't selected for that role, that that's available for them. And following up after interviews, you know, asking candidates for feedback. You know, what was it like for you? And again, it's not only those that you're selecting for your brand and for the role, but those who didn't get selected. And make those changes based on what they tell you if it's constructive feedback.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. We have a question related specifically to transparency here. What would you suggest a talent acquisition team should do in regards to transparency when their employer brand is poorly viewed?
Well, I mean, I guess you want to go back to the basics, right? I mean, if you feel like you're getting feedback, you want to, I mean, what's the first question we want to ask? Why? So gathering that feedback is really critical to that process, and starting from scratch and rolling up your sleeves. And I don't care if you're a brand that's 70 employees or 70,000, taking responsibility for your brand immediately, you know, and being able to turn that around. And that takes thought and strategy, and asking the question why, right?
That's great. So do you have any good examples of companies that are using transparency well in their employer branding?
No, I mean, I think there's a lot of great examples of transparency that's working. You know, certainly I would say Google as a brand over the years has done a pretty remarkable job of, you know, explaining what their culture's like and having stories from the inside out. I think Buffer is a pretty cool brand out there that I'd like to give shout outs to, where I know, you know, they're really making their employees more transparent, right? You know, I think there's a lot of brands out there, and it's not just the big brands. And I named one big brand, and I named Buffer. You know, I think there is a lot of good examples of brands. I mean, to me, if your employees are blogging, that's a pretty good sign that you've got a pretty rockin' brand going on there, right? You're letting your employees share their voice. So I can certainly get into more case studies around brands that I think are cool, but there's lots of them, and there's lots that really haven't even tackled this really complex topic of brand, you know? So it goes both ways.
Cool. So I know this is a pretty hot topic. What best practices can you share to manage negative reviews on Glassdoor and other online review sites?
You know, I think best practice is making sure that you actually are flagged that it's going on, right? Making sure that you have a responsive approach to whether it's positive or negative, right? And just having something set up where somebody who's really working at your company, it can't be a bot, by the way. That's far too easy. And having a process, having a plan, having a strategy around saying, you know, we're listening to you. And, you know, you may have had a negative experience, and we hear that, and we're actively trying to do something about that. So just being honest. It doesn't have to be fancy. You know?
Yeah, and I think it's great when I see a negative review and I see that a talent acquisition team member or even a CEO or a C-level executive has taken the time to respond to that. It really brings in the human touch in a great way, and I think that adds to the transparency of the brand.
It's not a role for PR, we'll put it that way. It's a role for real people living in that organization. It could be your CEO, It could be your VP of marketing. It could be your VP of talent. I don't care who it is. Get in there and engage. Nobody's perfect. And I don't think people expect brands to be perfect. They expect, you know, transparency and honesty and authenticity right now.
Cool. Well, we're on the topic of authenticity. What are some of the ways that you're seeing companies leveraging employee stories in their recruitment marketing strategy?
Well, I mean, this is really where the culture of the brand can come to life, right? So I think probably what I'm seeing in some of the coolest and hippest brands right now is the use of videos and using employee testimonials. It could be on your website, could be on your blog, and getting social, having your employees out there with a voice. And I think a lot of brands are really afraid of that. And, you know, I think that's where we see a disconnect sometimes of, you know, they've got so many rules for how employees conduct themselves outside of the walls of the organization without sensitivity to the fact that we're all on our mobile devices, we're on Facebook, whether brands like that or not, that's the reality of what's happening, and that is the future of work. So the sooner you can wrap your arms around the reality that people will talk, people will blog about it, people will not always use their best judgment when talking, right? Because people are people, we're fallible, and having a process set up that levels that field a little bit more and says, you know what, we're not perfect. To me, some of the most interesting cultures in the world are those that are just real. They just are. And you don't feel like it's a PR function of that recruiting marketing story, but it's real people, you know?
Awesome. So I think we have time for one more question, Megan. Could you talk a little bit about the types of content that you're seeing companies use to nurture their talent pipelines?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, the biggie is social media, right? All of the favorites. We've got Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, blogging, online articles, right? Video. You know, anything that you can brand as your own, even a webinar, right, should be considered a potential content tool for potential employees. So I really want you to focus on staying creative with the idea that there's not one way to do this. You know, it could be that video. It could be whatever you decide it to be, basically. It's fun. Now it's great. We have social media, right, as our tool to share our stories. When you actually get strategic about that with your content, it's amazing what you can do.
Great. Thanks, Megan.
You're welcome.
For all the questions we've got for today, so I want to thank you for taking the time to share your insights with us. Really enjoyed your presentation, and thank you to everybody who joined us this afternoon and this morning if you're on the West Coast. We hope to see you at our next webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.